Marc-André, bist du da?
Hallo. So, muss ich wieder den Namen ändern, so mühsam.
Du bist jetzt aber zweimal drin, ne? Einmal als Marc-André und einmal als Mega.
Genau.
Ah, das ist gewollt, alles klar.
Ja, ist blöd. Also die Mega nimmt drum alles auf, oder? Mit meinem.
Ach so.
Genau. Und das ist ihr Profil, oder deswegen.
Aber du kannst ja einfach von Zoom aus sagen, am Ende soll, dass die Session aufgenommen wird und dann kannst du einfach am Ende runter.
Ja, aber weißt du, sie macht dann auch alles, also Dokumente-Sharing und alles, solche Sachen. Also,
Ja, okay. Wir
genau.
sind live anscheinend, also
Mhm. Ja. Warte, wollen wir vielleicht noch eine Minute warten, oder? Warte schnell. Kurz. Ah, you're live. Okay, yeah. So then, perfect. Then we stick to English. So I'm very pleased. Welcome everybody. My name is Marc-André Schaubecker. I'm the president of the Swiss Association of MBAs. We are very pleased to have here David Siedler from Verve. We have already done a collaboration and an event last year, and was very successful, and we look forward to have a second round. This time the startups we present are not on your platform yet, so these are startups from our community, and maybe, who knows, one time they maybe also will be on your platform or on another one, and yeah, let's see what happens today. So yeah, we are also live as a streaming on our eTrain platform. So there I will share the screen. There you see it. It's a bit more exciting than just a Zoom call. I share with you. So I'm already here in a room, so you can go into the lounge or to the conference room and so on, to the reception. And here on the right side, you have you see the participants, and then you can write to me, to Marc-André Schaubecker, a question. So you can here directly chat with me, and so if you have questions, like you can write it, and then we will see it and give you a feedback and so on. And you can see on recommendations people with similar interests, so then you can network with them before and afterwards. So this is all available also afterwards, so no hurry. So you can really focus on the content. And yeah, so I will at the end then also tell you what comes next. But now I hand over to David, and thanks a lot for joining.
perfect. So let me just quickly share my screen so that we have my slides also up on the screen. There we go. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. So again, thank you so much for the invitation. Really happy to be here and presenting our perspective on investing in software as a service companies. My name is David Siddler. I'm the head of investor relations at Verve Ventures. Quickly, I'll say one or two words about Verve so you know who I am, who we are, and why we are qualified to have an opinion on this topic. Then we'll talk about what SaaS companies are and why SaaS companies are very well suited for venture capitalists and vice versa. And then we'll talk about how we as Verve Ventures assess such companies and what are the most important metrics that we look at when assessing such companies. So again, really quickly about us. So we're actually one of Europe's most active VC investors by now. And what we do is we grant investors a different kind of access to VC than they'd have via fund or other players. So with us, you can invest in a fund, but you can also invest directly into companies that have passed our selection process. We invested 60 million last year. In total, we've invested over 180 million euros. We've executed over 200 financing rounds and built a portfolio of more than 120 startups. These 120 startups come from all over Europe. So our home base is Switzerland, but by now we've invested in Spain, we've invested in the UK, we've invested in France and Germany. We even have dedicated investment managers for France and Germany, and executed 10 rounds each in those key markets. And we also invest in companies from early to growth stage. So also from a phase perspective, we invest in very different companies. In terms of our portfolio buildup, about 50% of our companies come from the digital space, and a lot of those have a SaaS or a marketplace business model. Then we have about 25% which are in the hardware space, and another 25 which are in the health tech space. So that can be biotech, pharma, medtech, but also digital therapies. And again, talking about the access we grant, so we do the whole selection process, we structure around, we syndicate it, we coordinate everything, and only once that work's done do we present these opportunities to our investors. And then through a digital investment process, you can really make your own decision and actually execute the investment completely online without printing a single piece of paper. And once you are invested, we take care of portfolio management and grant investors access to systematic reporting. We've had quite some success over the last few months. So we had 2 companies that actually went public in the second half of 2021, another 6 companies that were sold in 2021, and we already had 2 exits at the beginning of 2022. So 2 exits in the first month of the year. If we take a closer look at our digital portfolio, we have again over 50 companies that are digital, and a lot of these have a SaaS business model. So how do we, as an active VC investor that is very active in the space, assess such companies? So the first thing is to actually look at what actually is SaaS. What does that actually mean? So it stands for software as a service, which in itself is a mix of a product description and a business model. We're talking about software, which is the product, and as a service, which implies that there's a subscription you're paying. So some of you might be a bit older like myself and remember that you could used to go to MediaMarkt, Interdiscount, etc., and you could buy, for example, Windows or Office in a on a CD-ROM. So there'd be a box with a CD inside, you'd take that, you'd install it, and you'd have the software. Nowadays, oftentimes, software is actually hosted in the cloud and distributed via browser or mobile app. So instead of actually paying a large upfront fee to have the software, you pay a smaller fee, but you regularly pay that, which means that it's something that from a revenue perspective is interesting because you have recurring revenues. And what this also means from a distribution perspective from a company. So if you think that Microsoft, of course, Microsoft builds a massive distribution network and they can ship these CD-ROMs across the globe to all these companies. And it's very expensive to build up such a network. Whereas if something's hosted in the cloud and distributed via browser, it means that the marginal costs of distribution for every sold element are basically zero. So actually it might be expensive to develop a product, but once you have, selling it and distributing it becomes basically free of charge if you're selling it. So that means that this combination of recurring revenues, which means predictable revenues, and high scalability because of the distribution via app and hosted in the cloud, means that this is a textbook example for scalability. So if you're a venture investor, that's beautiful. So obviously it makes sense because recurring revenues and scalability means your growth potential is infinite. So the question then to ask is, why do SaaS startups actually need VC funding? If it's such a beautiful business model, why do you need investors to help you out? Well, that has to do with the fact that while it might be quite interesting once it gets running, sure, it's great, but actually getting those first revenues is quite difficult. And you spend a lot of money, first of all, developing your product and then doing advertising to make sure that people actually pay attention to it, and so you can actually start selling. And the thing is, then you need to take a closer look at the typical cash flow perspective of a SaaS company. So you have very high upfront costs to acquire a new customer. And as we mentioned, instead of paying that high fee in the beginning to purchase your software, you're paying monthly subscriptions, which are quite low, which means that you have very high upfront costs and you earn consistently, but only over time. So you're in a negative cash flow position on a company basis for quite a while before it turns positive. So the idea is that SaaS companies actually need to cover a funding gap in order to grow. And that's where VCs come in. And of course, the faster you want to grow, the more you need to spend. So let's assume you want to gain 2 new clients, then the funding hole you dig is a bit smaller. And let's say you want to grow a bit faster, it's deeper. And let's say you want to grow by 10 clients a month, it's even deeper. So that's VCs are here to fill that funding gap. But you could ask yourself, why do SaaS companies need to grow so fast? Well, that has to do that oftentimes the SaaS space is one where you see that there's actually a lot of competition, which means that especially once something works and people see this works, then it's very likely that you'll start seeing competition both from more established companies, but also from younger companies coming up to sort of attack. So from both ends. So actually speed and gaining clients and locking them in is very important, which is why you want to grow fast. So a VC obviously wants to fill this funding gap, but a VC wants to invest in a company that by digging this hole actually manages to get a steeper growth curve. So what are the main metrics that we as venture capitalists focus on when looking at software as a service companies? So I think the first thing to understand when looking at SaaS is the first thing you'll hear always is ARR and MRR, which means annual recurring revenue. And annual recurring revenue is essentially 12 times monthly recurring revenue. Now, it's important to bear in mind here that this is a forward-looking metric, which means that if you take, for example, your revenues in January, which are, let's say, 1,000 francs. So in January, your monthly recurring revenues are 1,000 francs. You multiply that by 12, you have 12,000 in annually recurring revenues. Now, let's assume you manage to win 2 new clients that bring you 4,500 francs each in February. Suddenly, your monthly recurring revenues jumped up to 10,000 francs. And that means that since we're talking about a forward-looking metric, your annual recurring revenues jumped up from 12,000 to 120,000. So this is, I think, one important thing to understand is that this is one important lens to bear in mind, and that additional monthly recurring revenue is actually very important, because if you look at that from an annual perspective, that can be quite a lot. Now, obviously, there's a bit of details on how to actually calculate this. For example, let's say with one client, you have a 3-year contract, so you annualize that over 3 years, but obviously that doesn't mean that after 3 years, you're going to keep that client. Whereas for clients that have a monthly basis contract, what you do there is you look at the churn, you look at how many clients you lose each year. So let's say 20%, and then you say, okay, that means you see that, or you look at the number of clients you lose each year, and then you sort of use that to sort of calculate what your churn rate is over time. But obviously your recurring revenue alone is only half the picture. What really matters is the relationship between the value of per customer, so how much you're going to earn on each customer, and the relationship of that to how much it costs to actually acquire customers. So the customer lifetime value is essentially how much will you earn over a customer over time. And this you calculate again by looking at the churn. So if you see you have a 20% churn, then you can see how many customers will stay over time. And essentially by year 5, you will have lost all the customers from one cohort. And then you look at that together with the customer acquisition cost. And what you want to see there is a healthy relationship. And essentially what you want is a customer lifetime value, which is at least 3 times your customer acquisition cost, and that it takes you about 12 months or less to get back your customer acquisition cost. Now, obviously, this is not some secret that only I know or that only VCs know. Everyone knows that this relationship is important. Now, oftentimes, your startups and VCs are talking at a time when you don't necessarily have the most reliable data on this. So startups will always do their best to present their information in a way that you can think as an investor, okay, that's very good customer acquisition efficiency, and the customer lifetime value based on the data that I see is very good. But in the early stage, this can be quite misleading. So there's additional questions we ask in our due diligence to assess the validity of the data that we're seeing. So one thing to say is a customer talks to you about their customer acquisition cost. It's important to see, what are we talking about? Are we talking about 1 customer? Are we talking about 5 customers? Do they have 10 customers? How representative is the sample of customers they already have? And then also an important point is, how do they get these customers? Are these basically former colleagues from the company where the founders worked? So basically the customer acquisition cost there is skewed, or is there no prior relationship with these people, which means that that's a more representative sample of what it actually will cost them and how difficult it is to gain new clients. Another thing is to also understand, which is related to this point, how long are the sales cycle? Again, if my former boss buys my product, that's not really a sales cycle. It's really people I don't know came into my funnel, we started a conversation, they actually signed the contract. What does that say? How long did that process take? And then it's also important to understand the different kind of customers that they have, but we'll talk about that when we talk about customer lifetime value. But obviously the sales cycle for enterprise clients versus small clients is very different. But when we're talking about sales, it's also important to see who's actually in charge of that. Like, do they have a good sales fund? Like, what's the pipeline look like? Who's running it? Is it the founding team? Do they have a person dedicated to sales? Is that a former intern that's now growing into this role? Or is this somebody with decades of experience in enterprise sales that already has started and proven that they can do this? And this is very important, because what you often hear when startups pitch is that they say, so we got our product right, we got our first 2 clients, and we need money now so that we can hire a sales team, and then things will really go through the roof. Reality oftentimes is that, and we've seen this also in the past, is that you have a lined up great salesperson, and they're probably better at selling themselves than anything else. And then they join. And then what happens is that they actually don't perform as well. And then what you see is that after 3-4 months, you're like, well, we'll give them a bit more time. And after half a year, no, they're just not performing. So you have to let these people go. You have to start the sales process again. You have 3 months before somebody new can start, and another 3 months until they're up and running. And boom, a year's gone by and your sales didn't go anywhere, but you just raised money to grow in the next 12 months, and suddenly you're trying to raise money again, and you're in a terrible situation because you didn't actually grow as much as you wanted. So it's just to understand the importance of sales in SaaS is immense, and having the wrong people make those decisions and drive those processes actually can be quite costly in the long term. And then another point to bear in mind is the company have a direct sales approach, so they're building up their own sales team, which is quite costly, as I mentioned, but you control it. If you have indirect sales via distributors, that can be quite great, because suddenly the market is massive and you have a whole sales team that is also selling your product. But how important is your product to the overall sales pitch of that salesperson that works for that distributor? Are you like a core feature that they want to bring in, or are you item 75 on page 38 of all the potential features that can be added? And how are the salespeople of the distributor incentivized to even push your product? So that's something important to understand when doing indirect sales. And self-service, which basically says we have a checkout on the website, sounds really great, but oftentimes is not that easy. So has the company actually proven that they can do that or not? That's a big question we ask on that side. So let's have a look at customer lifetime value, which I think is quite important. So there you want to look at the average distribution per account, and the revenue per account and how it's distributed. Are there 9 small clients and 1 big one that's actually responsible for 90% of the volume? That's quite a risky situation to be in, and that's something you want to take a closer look at and also understand. Another very important point to look at is to see, how does the product of the startup impact the client's budget? So are you selling to one department within a large corporation, and for if you look at their external provider budget, is your product 5%, 10%, 30%? If it's too low, it probably means the product's too cheap and can be sold more expensive. If it's too high a percentage, it means you can be sure that that client will be taking a close look every year at how useful your product is to make a decision if they should cut this from their budget. So that means that the risk of churn, of losing that client, is much higher. So those are things that we look at to understand a little bit, to take a deeper look at customer lifetime value. Then what's also important is to understand the level of support necessary. So is the product really self-service, or do you need a lot of interactions because it's buggy, because you need custom work? Because that's a frustration signal that can lead to customers leaving. And another point which is important here is also, can the company actually, if let's say they raise money now and they acquire a lot of new clients, but you know that you can onboard 3 new clients a week and you have 1 person dedicated to that, and suddenly your sales team is going through the roof, bringing you 30 new leads a week that need to be onboarded, and your onboarding team can't take care of that. That's also a crucial mistake, because the first impact or the first impression that new clients have is that this doesn't work, they're not efficient, they're not answering my calls, I've been waiting a week to get onboarded, and basically you're preparing them for leaving, which is one of the most important questions that we ask, is why do customers actually leave. And this is probably one of the most important things to understand when looking at software as a service businesses. So we talk about churn, which is basically the rate at which you lose revenue from lost customers. So let's assume in year one, you have 10 customers that bring you 100 francs in revenue. In year two, the revenue from this cohort goes down to 90 because either you lost a customer or a customer decided, actually, I don't need the enterprise solution. I'm fine with the SME solution. So you're getting 90 instead of 100 from that cohort. So your churn is actually 10. The opposite of churn is if you have negative churn, which obviously opposite of positive is negative. And negative churn essentially means that you increase revenues from existing customers. This is you'll probably hear this in SaaS as what you call land and expand. And essentially what that means is that, let's say the 10 customers you had that in year one brought you revenues of 100, suddenly you were able to upsell. You're able to sell more to existing customers, and your revenues the next year is 110 from that group of customers. So your negative churn is 10. Why is that so important? So let's look at the revenue performance of a company that has normal churn. So that means in year one, your sales team goes out, gets you 10 customers. They bring you this much revenue. By year two, that revenue goes down. By year three further, and it gets smaller and smaller. And your sales team is out there winning new customers. But what they're actually doing is they're replacing lost revenues, which means that your revenue curve over time will suddenly get flatter and sort of taper out. Now, the opposite of that, if you have a solid sales team that is bringing in new customers and you have a great customer success team or a retention team that actually increases the revenue per cohort, then your curve looks very different and you start growing exponentially, because not only because the revenues that your sales team is bringing is revenue on top, because you're actually increasing revenues from the clients that you won in the years before. So the big question that you have to ask here when looking at an early company is how to analyze whether churn will actually be an issue if a company is very early. So what are typical pre-churn indicators that we look at? So one would be, for example, what's the number of users that actually use the product on a daily and a monthly basis? Is this something that is quite high in the beginning but goes down? How many of the client of let's say the employees of a client actually use it? So let's say you have a department of 20 people, but only 5 bother to actually install the app. That's not a good sign, because it probably means that in a year's time, when you're talking to the employees, like, how useful is it to you? They'll probably say, I didn't even bother downloading it. And if you hear that from 15 out of 20 people, then you probably think this is useless. How intensively is the product used? So what's the amount of data that's uploaded or downloaded, or how high are the numbers of transactions conducted? So these are some of the questions that we ask to sort of assess whether or not there will be churn in the future. So to summarize, SaaS startups are perfectly suited for venture capital because they have scalable business models and because they have a predictable revenue. But they're also interesting but VC is also interesting for SaaS companies because they need a lot of money to grow quickly in the beginning. Proof of concept when looking at software as a service startups is not a working prototype. It's also not a demo, it's not a mock-up, but it's first reliable data on revenues and costs. And I think it's important when looking at such companies is that you focus on the basics. Look at churn, look at revenue, look at costs, and don't get lost in the jungle of potential metrics that are valid for SaaS companies. Really just focus on the basics. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I really look forward to hearing some of the companies here. I had a small look, and I think some of them really are typical SaaS business models, others less, but that's for us now to all find out. So again, thank you all for your attention.
Thanks, David, for the very interesting presentation. By the way, the whole session is recorded. Then you can again watch it again, and we could also share your presentation. It's very nice. And yeah, we are very happy to have Sam Adams here and Dr. Darna.
Hello. Hello. How you doing?
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Doing very well. How are you?
Very good. Yeah. What time is it for you? You're in the US?
Yeah, about 1:30.
1:30.
Okay. Lunchtime. So
after lunch.
Yeah.
We're good.
Perfect. Yeah. So we're very pleased to have you here and to listen to your startup. So the floor is yours.
Great. Switch over here and get the slide share.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a busy mom who just happens to be a doctor, and I don't have time to take my kids to the pediatricians, nor can I get an appointment this day and age. Telemedicine has really revolutionized that for everyone. And the doctor's always recommending such great over-the-counter products to improve overall wellness for my children. Problem is, I'm always driving and I don't have a pen or paper. I can't write them down, nor do I have the time to find each of these items online or go find them in store. I wish there was an online shopping cart that could basically take all of these online over-the-counter products and deliver them right to my door from your doctor's recommendations. If I, as a doctor, have that problem, what other mothers, fathers, and people across the world must have the same issue too? Hence why we created DocOTC, the only patent-pending, doctor-recommended over-the-counter fulfillment for improved telemedicine wellness outcomes for all people. So our why is extremely important to us. And the reason for that is we believe that at DocOTC, we can improve health and wellness outcomes and the relationship between the physician, the patient, and the over-the-counter retailers, leading to better outcomes, higher quality, and lowering those costs. As a physician, we do this in a nice, easy way. We believe that cost savings, convenience, and of course, wellness are extremely important. So the doctor recommended products that I tell my patients allows them to get well faster. So it's what we call in medicine a multimodal approach. It also helps to save money by finding the recommended products that I personally recommend to patients at the best price, plus reducing the cost per visit on the telemedicine with improving clinical outcomes. And you can be on your telemedicine calls worry-free because of the fact that you don't have to have a pen or paper. You don't have to be able to actually remember how to spell something, and or you don't have to be omnipresent. You can just have a shopping list and click that buy now button. Plus, the over-the-counter products are shipped directly to you at your doorstep or at your local pharmacy. So in the past decade, the physician-patient relationship has really been eroded. And that's why DocOTC's patent-pending platform takes the patient care and puts it back into the hands with the appropriate medical direction of the patient themselves.
And this is part of the goals of our platform, is transforming the relationship between the patient and physician by reducing the cognitive overload required on both parties and repositioning the patient as a consumer who now has a choice as opposed to being restricted.
So as a physician, I know it also helps the doctor, right? It decreases our workload by giving definitions to the patients of what these over-the-counter products do in real time and merges with their actual medical records to give each patient exactly what they need.
So on average, a telehealth session runs about 17.5 minutes. So even if we're able to reduce that by 2.5 minutes, by reducing some of the clear-cut activities, such as patient education, which is proven to improve patient outcomes, we can reduce the cost of the session and of the time while increasing quality.
Now, in order to be able to do this, it takes a unique experience, a combined set of skills in order to create this kind of value on a holistic platform with a proven track record of success. Please meet my team. Hi, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Darna. I am the co-CEO of our woman-owned company called DocOTC. I'm also the medical inventor of Nomo bands and better known as that physician turned serial entrepreneur in the healthcare realm. But my most important job calls me mom. My co-CEO sitting right next to me and CTO, Sam Adams, was formerly the Chief Technology Officer for WebMD, and Fernando Sanchez, the former CFO of Medtronic, both with over 20 years of executive experience in the healthcare medical technology field. Most SaaS platforms are really only looking at one piece of the equation or one piece of the pie. We at DocOTC are addressing the entire patient-physician lifecycle by ensuring that holistic focus on quality, cost, and outcomes. In the US alone, by this graph, you can see that 1/3 of the global market share represented in this actual telemedicine market. So going global is a promise, and we are planning on traversing all geographies and demographics with our SaaS platform. Now, medicine, as you know, is one of the top 3 industries in order to invest in. And as you can see with the global telemedicine market, we're growing at 9x in the next few short years, projected at over $460 billion market share, with the over-the-counter current market standing at an astonishing $148 billion just this year. Look at the rise in the telemedicine market that's exponentially growing, over 9x in just a few short years, plus the global over-the-counter market, which is growing steadily. And you can also see that our influence is proper in saying that we're starting in the United States and then we're moving out into Europe. That's what this funding opportunity is able to bring, because we can take advantage of the compound annual growth rates that are consistently rising in these two countries. DocOTC is the AI learning system that seamlessly works behind the scenes, so we can integrate into any telemedicine platform, medical records, giving the patients real-time suggestions, and a buy now button, so they're an active part of their holistic healing.
And the interesting thing to consider with our company is that we're not doing technology just for technology's sake. We have a very clear roadmap where we're implementing innovative technology when it supports tangible value, in this particular case, as defined by a revenue stream. But the tangible value also comes down to delivering improved outcomes, reduced costs, and increasing the quality of the experience.
So Sam, you want to tell us a little bit more about the SaaS platform? He's the Chief Technology Officer.
Sure. So our proprietary artificial intelligence system is created as a SaaS platform. We connect retail, telemed, electronic health records, such as Cerner and Epic, for example, together. We're platform agnostic, vendor, provider, and cloud agnostic. And the idea is that we're able to run in any geography, anytime, because we have an experienced team that's built global SaaS platforms and understands different geographic requirements, such as the ones, for example, in Germany and the rest of Europe.
Now, if you're interested in learning more about our secret sauce, AKA your currywurst over there, we do have our NDAs available and we can let you in on a little further knowledge. So our seasoned team of leaders and executives know what it takes to really deliver the revenue and value stream. That's what we bring to the table. We currently have a proof of concept and we're seeking $10 million for commercialization round. Multiple streams of revenue, including 4 that we have currently, through the telehealth subscriptions and getting a fee for every time something is added into that shopping cart as we send it to the store and or to their front door.
The integration with our platform makes the telehealth experience frictionless, easier, and tactile, adding tangible value that you can actually touch and feel. Our OTC integration adds high margin additional revenue stream that is not currently able to be captured in the typical patient experience.
Now, the platform meets both explicit and implicit demand. For example, the explicit by generating traffic of high margin items to the retailers. So this is a complete other retail source of money financially that they are not currently tapped into. And implicitly, they take the patient's care into their own. So as a physician, I know that when I provide education to my patient, it drives them to be more involved in their care. And when patients are more involved in their care, it creates better outcomes for all people.
So as an example of the innovation we're also driving as part of this commercialization ask is we currently have 1 patent pending in the US, and we have a pipeline of 6 more that we plan to apply for. We also plan to apply for these patents at WIPO so that we have international protection for the intellectual property that we're creating and delivering.
Again, my name is Dr. Jacqueline Darna.
I'm Sam Adams.
And this is DocOTC, where we have a clear path for creating better wellness for all. Talk to us because we talk back. Investment opportunities, and please, I'd love to hear some questions.
So yeah, thank you so much. Very interesting pitch. And it's, I mean, with the whole Corona, telemedicine got a huge boost. So it's great. I don't know, do you have already a first client, or is it like what is the development stage? Like where is the product? Like, is it working already?
We actually have our proof of concept that can actually be shown with obviously the signed NDA. And I'm physically getting on a flight right now. Jason Gorjevic is somebody who I've actually been on panels with as an executive for my other company and my other inventions. And I fly up to meet with him in Philadelphia as soon as we get done. So I'm catching a flight at 6:50 p.m. My time here.
And Jason's the CEO of Teladoc. And
yes,
we're looking to get a letter of intent from him. We do have a term sheet that's on the table. It values our company at about $27 87 million or so. We as founders believe the company's worth upwards of 50 million, closer to about 100 based on the intellectual property and based on the feedback we've gotten from a variety of different venture capitalists. So we're having difficulty accepting that, and we're open still to different term sheets from different investors.
Very good. 1 second, like for everybody, it's important that you can answer, also ask questions, and we will ask them if you put, you have to press on the chat button and then write a chat to me, write a short message, like, I don't know, what are you interested? For example, I would like to know now already, I mean, do you have already first investor, or have you raised some funds from friends and family, or where are you at the current stage?
Yeah, so that was the term sheet I was talking about earlier with a local family office that made an offer, right? Like I said, that's something we're having a bit of some angst over accepting, because we think the company's worth more.
And our proof of concept came. We're all successful entrepreneurs, executives of other entities. So again, in order to get us to the stage of commercialization, which we currently are in, we have already invested not just sweat equity, right? We've also invested actual tangible equity in creating this platform. And from learning, I've always been a healthcare executive, but also a healthcare entrepreneur. And I will say technology is expensive. So again, utilizing that in order to basically bring it to life, that's where we are as of yet.
Yeah, and to your question, right? We're not doing the traditional rounds where we have friends and family and seed and round 1, 2, or A, B, C, D, E, F, right? That's why we're looking at going right to the commercialization round. The proof of concept gets a lot of positive feedback, and it's logical for us to go from proof of concept to a prototype that's ready for commercialization. And given our history in implementing products and releasing products on the cloud, SaaS, and this is actually a B2B SaaS platform more so than a B2C SaaS platform. And sorry, that's business to business as opposed to business to consumer.
And if you saw in our last slide, we actually plan on being positive revenue stream in the millions just within the first year, because as we kind of talked about the intrinsic and extrinsic, it's very easy for the telemedicine companies to say, absolutely, we want it. This is an untapped market share because they get a percentage. And then from the other entity, the retail where I'm from, retailers are saying, yes, flood our system with more e-commerce purchases. So it ends up working at both ends. We as a company are able to have that the amount of money that we're getting is per patient or that's utilizing the system on the telemedicine call, as well as the cost per item that is placed inside of the shopping cart. So it's a win-win for everyone.
You have, thanks a lot for the presentation, first of all. If I may ask a question, you have a lot of different entities and partners you're working with. You have the telemedicine provider, which can be linked somehow to a health insurance, at least in Switzerland. That's the case in Europe oftentimes. So you have then either it delivers to you directly or via a pharmacy. And obviously, like, the health market is highly fragmented. So as you mentioned yourself, you can easily integrate with other players. But what experience do you have so far with doing that? Because from what you said, you basically want to tackle the whole world at once. When I've seen companies try to do that, what happens is that, you try to run before you walk, you often stumble. And you guys are talking about getting to million revenues in the first year. Do you have any proof of integration that have worked?
So I'll take this. So I have probably a couple of decades worth of integrating with multiple different systems, but more specifically, I have about 12 years of integrating into healthcare here in the US, both with companies such as Cerner and Epic, but also with the Veterans Administration, which, if anyone knows anything about the US Veterans Administration, their systems are usually as interesting as they may get. I'll be kind and generous to the integration side, right? Yeah. So globally, we understand that in Europe, especially, we typically have nations and national level that we would integrate into. On our side, if I jump into the weeds real quick, right? HL7, Smart Over Fire. Those are two technologies in the healthcare space that are pretty much standardized. I fully am aware of the fact that how they're actually implemented at each hospital, sometimes even within other regions, can be very, very significantly different. Because I've spent so much of my background, doing integration work, we have a number of different methods to which we can have a standardized interface on our side. Then the effort to actually integrate with somebody else, it becomes a lot easier. Fortunately, on average, about 70% of those integrations are pretty straightforward and pretty standardized. And then the only difference is that delta of any additional data that they want to pass back and forth. And because we're focused, mostly on the OTC experience, there's no prescriptions, there's no diagnoses. Our need for integration becomes a lot smaller. I fully anticipate, and I've also done e-commerce integration directly with retailers, that portion of the integration is going to be a bit more complex and involved, and is going to be changing over time. And again, I've had experience in my other company doing some integration work for Singapore Post when they went through acquisition spree and picked up 6-7 different companies around the world and tried to have one integration system. And that was a very memorable experience as well. So I agree. I completely understand where you're coming from, but we do want to target the U.S. market first.
Yes.
For about the first year to 15 months. And then from there,
and after 3 integrations of telemedicine within the United States, because again, it is a different healthcare system that we're working with, and because also with the relationships that I have within the telemedicine space of other executives that are in healthcare, that is the easiest method and modality, and plus my retail experience with working not just with the .coms but also selling into the actual physical buy now store entity on those retail shelves. But it's really important for us for you guys to understand, we're not trying to be another telemedicine platform. That's not it, right? We're not making tech for tech's sake. If it's already out there, we are a third party. So we're the integration utilizing all those things combined into one, and just to give the patient the best overall wellness experience.
Great question.
Paolo Buianti, a member, has asked, who is the customer? I mean, you have explained a little bit, healthcare provider, pharmacy, patients, all of them.
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? So our customer in day is whoever pays the bills, right? In this case, it's the telehealth platform and the OTC retailer. It just so happens that in addition to the benefits they get, our patient is the one that gets the majority of the benefit in their experience and the quality of the outcomes. And that experience is what drives benefit back to the telehealth platform. And by shunting this traffic, whether it's foot traffic or e-commerce traffic to the retailers, they're now getting a source of traffic that would otherwise typically be lost, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think of Teladoc, about 18,000 sessions a year, those are 18,000 different opportunities for a retail transaction that is currently lost, never picked up, never touched.
Mm-hmm. And for everybody, just a reminder here, you click on this button here, chat, and then you select me and you type here a message and then send us as Paolo did. So perfect. So David, do you have another final question? Maybe or maybe if then afterwards someone from our the audience has another one.
More a comment than a question. It's quite unusual to see a pre-revenue company ask for a big round and then say they're going to have $1 million in revenue the next year. That's just a very, very, a bold statement that, in my experience, I've seen actually never works out that way. But again, I'm always happy to be proven wrong and stuff like that. And the way you guys described your track record, you could certainly pull it off. But it's just the reality of things. Even past experience doesn't necessarily always translate into the new business, especially when you don't have a big name in your backing. Can be quite difficult.
Yeah, and we do have that round broken up in tranches as well, mm-hmm. right? So anywhere from 3 to 4 tranches, depending on the negotiation with a particular VC and the term sheet. And each of those tranches, of course, have different milestones we'd have to hit in order to free up the next round. So absolutely, I agree. But,
mm-hmm.
Yep.
And the other thing is too, I think it's important because we were kind of discussing this prior to, but we were just taking as a 20%. So taking a look at, the actual telemedicine companies that I personally have connections to with their different executives, hence why I'm very grateful. But again, it's that nice integration so that we can all make money and we can do it fast.
Great. Thank you.
So so you have answered to one question. So I think the expected margin are 20%. Is that correct?
The expected margins, you said?
Yes.
We just said that in taking, we were being very generous in taking only 20% of those people who were on a telemedicine visit for one telemedicine company at returning a very large multi-million-dollar rate within that next year.
Okay. And maybe last, the competitors, maybe.
So we did say time's up, so I just want to be respectful of everyone else. You want us to go ahead and answer that now or offline?
Yeah. I mean,
All right, I'll go ahead and you can cut us off. So great question, right? So it's interesting because you see companies like Teladoc and the way that they're expanding their footprints of becoming a wellness company. Same thing with CVS, which is a retailer here. And what they're doing is they're expanding horizontally in the space of buying other companies that provide health services. None of them really are thinking about integrating with each other. None of them really are thinking about how do we make the patient's life easier. And everybody wants to reduce the amount of time and increase the quality that the physicians spend and the patients get. But the way they're approaching is by adding more services in, instead of kind of assessing and saying, hey, what if we made some tools, some elements that are a little bit easier, that makes the whole process a little bit easier?
And as of right now, we know that there are other retailers in the United States who are thinking about doing that, but they would only work one-to-one, very exclusive. We're agnostic and can work with any telemedicine or any telehealth system. And obviously we plan on also integrating that anytime that you're at a family practice or general practitioner that has a laptop, an iPad, a cell phone, anything of that entity, we can also be involved.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the great pitch. And I know you are very successful founders already. And was great to know. And now we have, as a next startup, we have Crowdhouse, and we have here Adrian Gelesho and also Francisco Fernandez. Pleasure to have you. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yes, we can. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So now I hand over to you. You can present. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's start by an introduction who we are. I'm Francisco Fernandez. Originally, I studied 30 years ago computer science at the ETH Zurich and the second master study in economics. Then I became an entrepreneur. My first company I founded was Avaloq, which was one of the world's largest fintech companies, which I exited 1 year ago at $2.5 billion, sorry. So it's a multiple unicorn. It was actually the second company I exited. I had another fintech in the insurance space. And in the meantime, I became a serial entrepreneur. I manage now 10 companies where I either founded or are a co-founder or, let's say, very early investor. And one of my favorites is, of course, Crowdhouse, which we'll present today, which is a fintech real estate type of platform. And with that, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Ardi Angelosci.
Thank you very much, Francisco. Welcome, everyone, and thank you also for this possibility to show our company. So I will just connect with the presentation. I hope you can see that.
You have to share the screen.
Genau. So now some technical issues as always.
No, yeah, if it doesn't work, we have it also. Otherwise, Mega can share it. Mega, can you please share it also? Is it not working for you?
Let me check. Is it now working to show the screen? Oh yeah.
Okay, now it works. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. All right. Very good. So Crowdhouse, what we do is we empower people to access not only real estate, but real connections. Why? It shows how we started. So we started in 2015. It seems to be a very long time for us. But if you see the numbers, it's only around 6 years. And we have started with the co-ownership, which means people invest together in fractional ownership of investment properties. And then we moved and added the brokerage. So something that we know today where people can buy and sell investment properties. And the next step was to match them and bring them together, which then obviously resulted in the transaction platform that we are today, where co-ownership is a possibility, brokerage, and people can buy and sell their properties. So what we are is a transaction engine compared to, let's say, other players that are only just a platform of of properties that you only can see. And here you can buy and sell properties and also invest.
So the start was actually a very purposeful mission that you say properties, real estate are only accessible to the rich or to institutional. While normal retail people lose 2% on their savings account, we found that real estate is an asset class that we can have an IRR, so a return on investment of 6.5%, plus it has a value increase of another 5%. So you can get returns of 12% while you are losing almost 2% on your savings account. So why not democratize the possibility to invest in real estate as a retail person? And this is what we did by saying we can take a house that is fully rented out, we fractionize it and sell fractions to retail people at an amount that everybody can afford. So you can start investing 50,000 in an apartment house. This was not possible before. That's how we started. And then later on, institutionals were starting to see what we can do on the platform, transact, buy and sell real estate or fractions of real estate. And they started saying, I buy the whole estate instead of just a fraction. So in the meantime, we can offer either fractional ownership investment in a house or transact the whole house.
And so our vision is to make the real estate transactions efficient, transparent, and accessible. Why is that important? Because, as also Francisco mentioned, it was not possible even to get to properties like this. So we made it accessible. So today you don't have to walk around and call up people. You just type crowdhouse.ch and you get straight to the properties. And then transparent, because you have all the documents, you have the whole data room to be able to decide how much and where you want to invest. And then obviously also efficient, because you could do it just today after this call within a few minutes, which normally would take you days or months just to gather all this information.
Real estate as an asset class was an intransparent asset class that is only tradable over an agency network or a broker network, or sometimes at auction houses. Now you have a digital platform where you can just go on the platform, see what's available, see what's accessible, and transact immediately.
And so how we do things, people always asked us, how do you do that? We always answered, we just do it. And the way we do it is also something that we have as values inside the company is bold. So we try to really move forward and not forget then that we are humans and still interacting with humans. So the other side at the other side of the table or of the computer, there is always a human interacting. And that's why we don't want to break things. We want to move forward, but also be very considerate how we do it. And we never forget that we need to invent that. And I can give you an example here. The government and also the system of taxes that are set up here in Switzerland with the different cantons. So what they have done is, because of us, because of Crowdhouse, they have now a Crowdhouse sheet, Excel sheet that shows them this is how you treat transactions, regular transactions. This is how you treat transactions done by Crowdhouse, because they're differently, so they're efficient, they're done in a smooth way, and because of us, a lot of people do more transactions that they are used to do. So it's very interesting fascinating to see here how we also invent and then also set new standards also in terms of the cantonal on political stage.
So you can buy a fraction of a house or a whole house with a couple of clicks. It's frictionless, fast, secure, and cheap.
And this is also the proof that what we are doing is kind of something that people want and also something that is needed. And the track record shows it. It's over 2 billion of real estate transacted all over Switzerland, as you can see. And in terms of properties, it's now more than 240, it's around 300. But it shows also, again, that we do a lot of transactions. And when we compare that with the whole market, it's still very small. So our room to grow in Switzerland only is still huge.
So we sold 2 billion Swiss francs in real estate ownership, while there's a 30 billion market alone in Switzerland. And this is, of course, not restricted to Switzerland. You can transact in real estate globally, which would be a roughly $180 trillion market.
Mm-hmm. And our partners here in Switzerland is also important to know that we have won a lot of awards, not only from the very well-known University of St. Gallen, but also one of the first Swiss FinTech Awards. Now it's very well known. And we work with local lawyers, estimator of properties with all the banks, Kantonalbanken, Raiffeisen, and all the other banks here in Switzerland. And what we have as well is the employee experience. Is interesting to know that it's not only with a heavy real estate knowledge, but also because we do the process is online. We have also a lot of experience from people from Netflix, Google, Facebook, and so on that used to work there and now are working for us. And so what we have is, as a company, through our awareness and marketing steps that we have taken the last few years, we are very well known here in Switzerland. And these are a few examples for people who live here, have, I would say, have for sure seen one of these billboards.
So we had to establish a brand and this new type of asset class that is available for retail people. We had to educate the market first. So we had to do pop-up shops, advertising, media coverage, seminars, webinars. So we didn't stop promoting that new asset class because it is really new. If today you want to invest in real estate, either you have the 20 million to buy the apartment house entirely, so you are a rich person or an institution. Otherwise, you can only invest in funds. I've been working in the financial industry for 30 years, and I know that you will pay retainment fee, performance fees, administration fees, etc. So you are loaded with a lot of fees, very expensive, very intransparent, and it takes months to transact and to have a change of ownership in a house. We can sell a 10 million house within hours today on our platform. And the other very important USP is if you invest in a fund, in a real estate fund, you actually don't really know what you're buying. You are buying into a portfolio. We remember the subprime crisis 2008, who has destroyed 55 trillion worldwide. Started with actually a crisis on house investment vehicles, on housing investment vehicles, because you don't really know what you buy if you buy into a rate fund, and you have the counterparty risk that these funds or these banks or these financial institutions can go bankrupt. A house can never go bankrupt. So when you invest in a crowd house, in a house through crowd house, you are an owner in that property object, and you are registered on the land registry. So there is no counterparty risk that can go bankrupt. You are a fractional owner in a building, and nobody can take that away from you. So this is a huge difference in investing in houses just through funds.
And to add here, building up this community was a lot of work, as Francisco mentioned, with all these years. What we have realized now is that people want to learn a lot through us. And it shows also that people think they know a lot about properties, but when they start to hear what we say, they realize they don't know almost nothing. And we get that a lot as a feedback. They say we learned very much, which then adds up and pays into using also our platform and CrowdTus, because people are more educated and know what they are doing. And it makes also the whole process and interaction with everyone much smoother. And by the way, you can see here, we used to be at 13,000. So just yesterday, the marketing chef told me that the marketing leader told me that we are now moving towards 100,000 views. So it's very interesting how it scales up very fast. And also our interviews on Spotify are weekly, and they are listened by many people. So this is really something, building up a community, which also generates a lot of worth.
This has also led to the fact that our typical customer comes back and transacts more than once. So people started to buy one first transaction at Crowdhouse, a second one, a third one. The average customer is, I think, at 350,000
exactly.
Investment, and repeatedly, and not just once. So we are really unleashing the power of the asset class of real estate ownership.
And so we use technology a lot to do that, because again, the whole transaction of properties and investing in properties was before Crowdhouse. It was like in the Stone Age, and with us, we moved it to the digital age. And this we see the platform as we use, and also we want to expand with the platform with Crowdhouse into the German and Austrian market. And we are talking here already to players at these markets. And this is Crowdhouse, where we are in our offices.
Where
are we now?
Sitting right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And so this is also an interesting picture that I want to give you some more context. Now here, it's a huge building. We are 130 people, and it's in the middle of the city. And it used to be, before Crowdhouse here, it used to be the house of Royal Bank of Scotland. Now, it's very interesting when you think about it. Royals don't exist anymore. Well, banks, they still exist, but you get the point with these neobanks and with the crypto transactions. And then you see a fintech coming up to this building. So it's very fascinating to see how things evolve over the years. And we said that also here, when you see us and walk around, you will see what we say. We say in German, hier prägen wir die Immobilienmarkt Zukunft. So we will...
The future of real estate transacting.
Exactly.
So the next step would be to, if we say fractional ownership, what comes to your mind is tokens, and have a liquid secondary market for fractional ownership in housing. Unfortunately, the regulator did not allow yet for real estate tokens in Switzerland because of a special law, which is called Lex Koller, that forbids foreigners to own even a fraction of a Swiss real estate. There are now nice innovations, like a new protocol which is coming up with strong identification of the wallets in the layer 1 protocol, which will potentially allow in a year or two that the regulator will say yes to tokenization of real estate also in Switzerland. Everywhere else abroad, we could already start tokenizing the fractional ownership in houses, which we will do. That's one of the reasons why we also want to expand into the neighborhood, to Germany and the rest of Europe, later rest of the world, to scale, but also to make the last step in liquidity, speed, and security of ownership change through tokens.
Just a slide later, like I work for PwC, and we have a solution. I can then already.
Okay.
Yeah, the solutions that are today ready in Switzerland are not the same, because they usually do a vehicle around the real estate. And that's not the same, because when you invest in a vehicle, there's immediately counterparty risk of the ownership of the vehicle, and you cannot register in the land registry. So it's a nice workaround. I know about that, but it's not the end. It's not the end game yet. So we are interested in how things will evolve in the future. But I think the end stage will definitely be transacting fractional ownership in houses and other asset classes through tokens.
Definitely. So thank you so much. I don't know, David, do you want to start with the first question?
happy to. I mean, first of all, I remember meeting Ardian when he came actually to our office for an event that we did, I think, in 2015, which was a garden barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Crowd house. And I remember that's when I met you. And since then, obviously, you guys' marketing is amazing. All these, everything you talked about, I've seen all over Zurich. I've seen the cars driving around with your logo on it. And I'm actually sitting right close to you guys. I'm in the Hürlimann Areal, and we're actually going to be moving, and we'll be even closer to you guys.
Nice.
So and it's really great to see how you guys have developed, and I mean, a lot of what you said I can relate to, because democratizing, granting access to real estate is what we're doing with venture capital, and a lot of this putting on, building a community and putting out great content that the people find. That's exactly like the webinar that I gave on SaaS. That's empowering people to make their own decisions when looking at these topics. So it's really great to see how you guys are developing. So enough gushing. One question. You guys mentioned sort of in passing expanding internationally, but I'd like to hear more about that, because I mean, as you said, 2 billion transactions a year. So Francisco could cover that on his own. What you guys are doing now, wanting to go up to 30 in all of Switzerland, but I mean, the world is your oyster. What are the challenges if you're looking at international markets?
I've taken already a company, several companies international. So out of the 10 companies I have, I think 8 are already multinationals. So I know what it means to take a company international. That's always, a big piece of work, and also associated with tough risks. So I hope that I can bring some expertise in here, doing it for the 9th time. I know the risks beforehand. It's always challenging, the regulation. I mean, real estate ownership is a highly regulated thing. So regulation is definitely one of the big challenges. There are cultural challenges, of course. Going first to the neighbor in the north, Germany, you have at least the same language. The regulation is not that different. It's probably even easier because the Lex Koller falls away. Yeah. But there are always challenges. You land in a new market, you're nobody, the brand is not there yet. You start, from almost from scratch, at least in terms of marketing and awareness. So there are several challenges to go when you go abroad. But we have now the power, the force, a good cap table, good shareholders. We can do very fast decision making. And so actually Ardian, Robert, and me as founders can still decide everything. We will, of course, open up our cap table. We plan to make a first round after the seed phase. And I don't know many startups, to be honest, that after the 4th year are still in seed phase and are already profitable and have marketed 2 billion revenues in that time. So I must say that also financially, we have the power to lift such an international expansion. Knowing that we still have market share-wise still almost nothing in Switzerland. I mean, out of the 30 billion, we have done 2 billion. So we have still a tiny market share in Switzerland, even being financially successful. And if you look at the world, as I said, it's $180 trillion industry. So it's an endless scalability potential in that market.
One more question. First of all, thank you for the answer, and it makes total sense. The premise of democratizing makes total sense in a country like Switzerland, where, as you mentioned, real estate is owned by institutional investors and the very wealthy. I think the home ownership rate in Zurich is less than 10%. Nobody owns an apartment in Zurich. It's just impossible. But if you go to the UK, if you go to Germany, if you go to the Nordics, if you go to Holland, home ownership is a thing. People own homes. So what's your proposition in countries where actually home ownership rates are much higher? Why would they use your platform instead of buying their own home in such markets? Or would you not?
No, they still buy their own home. As you have seen, we started with fractional ownership. So in markets where you have more a rental type of model, fractional ownership allows that the owners that finance the house, so the owners of the house and the renters of the house are different people. In an environment like Spain or UK, where home ownership is the model, which is going to be more and more difficult going forward. If you look at the international markets, and the buying power of people, you will see more and more rental models, like in Germany, Switzerland, etc. But even if you want to own your house, you would transact over the Crowdhouse platform because it's faster, frictionless. You find the real estate on offers much faster. So as we have said, we started with fractional ownership, and then we had to add full ownership with a brokerage model, because there are more and more institutions coming in here, but also in other markets where people would just buy the house if they can afford it. They can also transact over Crowdhouse, and it's frictionless usability, accessibility, and professionalism in transacting. So it's much faster. Instead of 3 months for a handover of an ownership, we can do it in days or weeks.
And what kind of houses is it mostly? I think it's more not family houses, it's more like business houses. Or
right now in Switzerland, for the first phase, we were focusing on residential multifamily apartment houses.
Okay.
But we could also expand the model into villas or whatever you want.
Okay. And I don't know, maybe the financials model, like how is it? Like how much do you take like from the transaction? Is this?
So what we do is for transaction, we take 3% for the transaction price. And then we have also the asset management and the property management. So this one is what we take is in terms of the revenue of the rental income. So these are numbers that are known in the Swiss market. So which means an investor or a buyer and the seller knows that these are usual industry standards.
It's a competitive pricing model, and unlike the competition, it's all fully transparent on our website. So a user of Crowdhouse knows that fully transparent, nothing hidden.
And then we have a question from Tobias, like how is it in detail the physical transaction execution works, buyer and seller fee and taxes to be paid? Is it a fractional registration not more expensive?
Sorry, I have to read the question here.
Concerning taxes and fees, is a fractional ownership any different than a full ownership?
Yes, I was also thinking like when you then sell it, like you get taxed, or because you are
you are. It's the same thing like being an owner by yourself. It's just everything is fractionalized.
Okay.
Just the numbers are smaller, but the percentages are the same.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think we are a bit over the time, but it was very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Okay,
welcome.
You're welcome for the first financing round.
Yeah.
end of the year.
Thank you. So then we have the next startup. We have a bit younger one. Yes. I mean, not younger in the age of the startup, so a very early stage one. So we have here Eduardo from Virtuasis. Hello, can you hear us?
Yeah, we are.
Hello.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
Good evening. So yeah, we're looking forward to listen to you. I apologize, we had a bit a delay because like it took a bit longer. They had a lot of questions. So yeah, now that the floor is yours.
It was very interesting, by the way, listening to all the presentations. So for us, it's perfect. We'll try to be a bit quicker. So
I take your time. Everybody has the same thing. So
okay, thank you very much. So I'm here with Laura. So we are the co-founder of Virtuosis. Tonight we're gonna talk about affective computing, and we're gonna start sharing our presentation now. There we go. And this one. Here we go. I put in a screen. So, what's about affective computing? Virtuosis is active in the field of machine learning, and has been built to unlock behavioral insights from video calls. So, what's that? We live. Hold on. we live in a world where there's a lot of anxiety, stress, depression. They've always been existed. The only issue is that in the recent 2 years, basically has been increasing and is becoming real issues for corporates and all kind of people. Here you can see some quantified aspect of this issue. So you have 190 billion a year, according to a relatively old study of Harvard in 2015. We have seen that burnout, anxiety, depression has been increasing recently. There's a study of Lancet in October. And of course, in all corporates, there are issues, those issues going on more and more. So we wanted to find a tool based on scientific research, and Lara is the mind about that, in order to improve and to reduce, to prevent those kind of issues, both in the corporate world, so that's our first target, and then on a broader perspective for everybody. So we don't want to, our vision is actually to stop or at least reduce all those issues you can see here. So in a corporate environment, we are used to so many Zoom calls, a lot often when you you work from remotely, you have issues with your colleague, it's more difficult to understand what other people are really thinking. Depression has increased, burning out rates have been increased as well. So we are trying to find a way to solve that, at least making our best to that. So we came up with a checkup for the well-being of remote workforce. What is that exactly? We have developed a web app analyzing emotions and communication skills during video calls, like the calls we're having right now. Interface is quite simple. So you can see on the screen, there are some different skills, different features which can also be customized. That's on the left. More on the right, you see the emotion themselves and a wellness score. And also at the bottom, you see an evolution. So you can track, thanks to our application, the evolution of your well-being. We can deliver a personalized report. And on a company perspective, because we are within the SaaS B2B field, since we have VC here listening to us, customers get an increase in motivation and productivity. We wanted to balance the benefits for both corporates and employees. So it is a tool for employees to receive their feedback on themselves and to improve their well-being. At the same time, corporates will be able to manage better their teams and to detect early issues within their remote teams. So it can be a talent management tool. We mentioned before a bit about the communication issues, so it can be used for collaborators for identify potential conflicts in a team that sometimes people are not really, they feel a bit shy talking about. And of course, the added value we see a big potential is to the early detection of burnout. It's of course easy, fast, and efficient. We don't need to arrange specific interviews. So often you have HR managers or external people who can have one-to-one interview with people in a team, or also can be in case of candidates. The application are multiple for sure. So for us, basically this tool can be applied at any kind of video call. We have integration with Microsoft Teams. We're going to talk about that later on. And results can be given within few minutes at a moderate cost for the company. Is of course GDPR compliance, because we're touching sensitive issues, and it's based on scientific literature, and Lara can talk more about that. How does it work? You can do it soon with a simple plugin within Microsoft Teams. Zoom will come, don't worry, but we start with Teams. I'll record 15-minute video calls and upload it to our web app, already working. So we're not talking about a demo or something. We analyze the voice, tone, or speed with machine learning, and maybe Laura can give a bit more detail later on, and you receive your personalized reports. I will show you a little bit, if it's possible. Yes, we have our web app already active. I should get it here. You can see an example. It's very simple. This has been built in-house. So from scratch, based on a proprietary algorithm, which has been developed, you will see during almost 1 year research at EPFL. So you upload the video and you get a report. Almost there. That's the report you have seen. An example. And this is automatic. Again, since we are with the VC listening to us, this is a growing market. I know they like to classify companies, HR tech, health tech. I would say we are between the HR tech and health tech. For simplicity, we take the HR tech market, which is a $16 billion market, mostly in the US. So it's US market, but figures are about, we found figures only in the US. Within that, we take the soft skills assessment software. It's 800 million, and we want to reach $100 million per year. This is the pricing, basically. It's a business model, let's say, keep it simple. We have two, for the moment, we have two basic plan. One is 25,000 Swiss francs, euros, whatever, for 50 assessments. And then there's advanced plan with 100,000 for a continuous assessment, up to 500 assessments. And it's included tracking. You've seen in the previous slides, there is a way to track the progress, and also integration with HR IT system. So it's a SaaS, since we have listened to the very interesting presentation. So it's a yearly subscription, because actually in B2B, in this field, we have found companies ready to pay yearly fees, which is better than monthly fees. And it's a steady revenue we hope to get. Our sales channels, actually we are lucky to have Microsoft as partners, strategic partners at board level. And we have the chance to have some sales, the full sales support of Microsoft sales team. But we also consider we've already got on board some executive coaches to be like kind of ambassadors of our tool. And also there's going to be LinkedIn, HR communities, and so on. Competition, again, is always very well appreciated by investors. The first two companies are traditional large corporations which provide in real life setup services. The third one is a startup like ours. I would say the key differentiating factor of our product is that beside the algorithm, which includes some specific features others don't have, is that we can do it in a spontaneous way. So we don't have, again, to have someone say, let's have a call, we're going to make an assessment, which is quite boring, stressful, and yeah, not that effective. So we can just activate the plugin for any kind of calls. The team, it's myself, so I'm an entrepreneur. I have a decade of experience in sales, business development in multinational companies, and I've co-founded a few companies in the past 7 years. Lara, maybe you can introduce. I've been monopolizing. Usually it's her speaking, but since we have been in touch together, I gave the speech. So Lara, maybe you can talk a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So currently I'm a research collaborator at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, working on machine learning to analyze human behavior. And I also worked as a software engineer for several European and Silicon Valley based startups. Actually, I started working on the technology behind Virtuosis during my thesis.
Maybe you can show you the milestone. You can describe it a little more.
Yeah, sure. So until August 2021, so the focus was the R&D. So the development of the algorithm behind Virtuosis, which was in collaboration with psychology researchers.
We had two external universities as well.
Yeah.
So Neuchâtel and Geneva. And then we get back quickly to Yves as well. He's not there with us, but he's a senior software engineer. So we needed some senior guy to ensure that the product is built in a proper way. And he's currently working hard with 3 other engineers for the Microsoft Teams plugin. So we agreed with Microsoft to go live at the end of March. So we are working on, so the main goal for us is to make a very smooth, very secured plugin for Microsoft Teams. And he's also a professor also at Dauphine University in, say, IT as well, from time to time, assistant professor. We go on with the other milestones after the research. Maybe you want to continue?
Yeah, sure. So we realized the first pilot project with the Swiss Confederation. It was back in May. Then by the end of October, we launched our MVP. So the video you saw earlier was the recording of this MVP that we launched for the Web Summit in Lisbon, and we got more than 100 users registered within 2 weeks without any marketing.
Yeah.
And
this is what I was talking about. So it's really our main focus is Microsoft cooperation. We are not a part of Microsoft, so we are fully independent, but we're lucky to get their backing. We are bootstrapped, so no VC. We have received different investors interested to get into our, to get some money in our company. We are open for intelligent request proposals. Let's say we can go ahead with our funds for let's say for the 2023. But we are happy since there are a lot of, like was mentioned before, there's going to be a lot of sales costs involved to go up. I think it's a necessity to go to venture capital. So we are very open to that. We are in discussion with a few of them. And then, yes, maybe we have, maybe you want to talk about the future, the vision of the...
Yes, so the features
basically
you saw earlier, so about emotions assessment and communications skills, we are not stopping there. So we plan to incorporate more about soft skills, so such as leadership and negotiation skills, insight into our product later this year. Features for which I've already done research early 2021.
Yeah, so I think that's all. So we're happy to answer any questions. We'll try.
David, do you want to start? Thank you so much for the great pitch.
Yeah, great pitch. I really enjoyed it, and it sounds quite interesting what you guys are working on. First thing that came to mind when I heard sort of the value proposition you presented in the beginning, I identify burnout, see how people are doing psychologically. From an employer perspective, I see why I as a company would want that. But I mean, and I'm sure this isn't the first time you're answering this question, but employees don't necessarily, my mental health is none of the business of the company I work for. And, if I know that they're watching me for signals of maybe, how do you, or what's your experience with that, or like with the companies you work with?
And also like I don't know, do you need to consent, because when you record, you need to first consent. We cannot just record a video, otherwise this is a criminal act. So
yeah, sure, we are GDPR compliant.
Yeah, but this is not GDPR. This is
law.
This is really top. This is
that is top. Both questions are very.
GDPR is nothing. The other is really criminal. You go to jail. So you can only record.
I'm gonna run away. Okay, no, that's absolutely pertinent question. It's not the first time, but this is actually to reply for the first question of David. That's why we have, let's say, two value propositions, in the sense that, as you know, in the sales process, you have those buying the product and the user of the product. So the user of the product also are the employees that maybe they wouldn't like to buy the product because we're in the B2B. That's why we have found actually a lot of, when Laura mentioned about the pilot projects we did in the B2C environment, and a lot of people really wanted to know their skills. So they were more interested into the different features, which is not the burnout. So it's not, of course, if you talk about, that's why we are in the HR, health tech. If we talk about health and you say, yeah, do you want to assess your health status? How is your mind? They will be, what's going on? So we want to provide features that are appreciated by the employees so they can get traction. And there's something very interesting was too that we didn't think at the beginning. It was really to provide a pattern evolution of them. They want to know how I'm performing now, how it's going to be in 3 months, in 1 year. And that's very good also regarding the SaaS business model, because it can provide a steady revenue. It's not just we make an assessment, goodbye, and it's done. It's something that can be, and that's coming from the employees. On the other side, you have to consider that we can deactivate also the feature. So, because depending on the countries, Mark, to reply to Mark, Andre, recently a few states in the United States have been putting in place some legislation about these kind of issues. And which is even over the GDPR is really, the fact, as you mentioned, that some specific features are really embedded like a human right one. So it's very important that the employees have consent. Also in the United States, corporations are much more flexible and protecting much less than European ones. But I think that as soon as you see maybe NGOs, some political parties, some putting pressure, probably within a few years, there's going to be a regulation on that. So we have to ensure that we have some feature can be deactivated. And also the way the models are trained, which is another third question I would have expected as well, maybe would have come later, is the bias. So maybe Lara, you can also add something about that. I don't know if I replied. No, I think they're missing the legal part also.
It's okay. it's just like in Switzerland, it's like when you record someone, you need his permission. This is what you need.
There's going to be, actually, we are putting in the team, Microsoft Team plugins, there's going to be an alert and the option, like we discussed today, that with the other engineer, we want absolutely that if one guy doesn't want to be recorded, has the right not to be recorded. And the model will work with other people willing to be recorded.
Yeah, but it's a requirement in the GDPR.
Yeah, but anyway. besides that, it's ethical. Personally, it's for ethical reason. We want it to be.
Exactly. Yeah, and we have already a question from another startup entrepreneur, Jacqueline Dana. She asked why not only Teams and not Slack. Slack would be and when we have. First, maybe answer this question. Yeah, sorry.
No, actually, it's a question of resources. We are a startup. We are bootstrapped, and we have a backing from Microsoft.
Yeah, that's
so
very.
We want to focus, and also we are in B2B. When our sales model will be based on the talking also to key managers to a different level. So you have managers, HRs. There are different people in large corporations, and using Teams basically is the easiest to address those markets.
Yeah, and it's mostly so we use the video call functionality of Microsoft Teams, and for now the web app we have is actually software agnostic. It's just that it's less integrated with the video conference software. And so as we have the support of Microsoft, this is why we first build a plugin for
it. It's very good.
And also legal point of view, so reply, I think, your question before, the effect of using Teams with the agreements with Microsoft, we don't need to re-sign in each country with each company new legal agreements, which is much more effective.
Then another question from Paula. Since this is an AI-driven startup, how are you ensuring the algorithm methods for diversity, threats, culture?
Sure. So this is something we take into consideration from the beginning. So also actually, being a woman, I'm really concerned with that because data and studies are mostly done on males. So we really ensure that our data set, we have from different ethnicity, from different gender people, and that this is balanced. And we always take measure of that. You disappeared the question, but yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
It's just I wanted to make sure that I'm answering the question.
Yeah, that's good. We have another one from Tobias. What is the sample size you use to train the AI algorithm? So what is the error rate versus an evaluation by a trained psychologist?
Okay. Sure. So we are constantly like training more and more our algorithm, so it gets better. So yeah, for now we are still making assessment from psychologists to label our data and to continue training our algorithms.
Yeah, so in addition to sales costs, actually manual training from qualified people is also an additional cost that maybe VC funds would be appreciated.
Yeah, and to give an accurate error rate, I would wait until we do more than 1,000 assessment. Yeah.
Maybe David?
Yeah, sure. I have one question. So you have, the integration with Microsoft. What about, can you say something about your experience with first clients or pilots?
Okay, but we are closing a sale with a telecom company outside Europe, and they are waiting for the team, for the Microsoft team.
Okay, so you're now launching the first.
Yes, and the key thing is to have a soft launch because we cannot go global because with Microsoft, so if it works, it can really be huge. So we're gonna start first with Switzerland. So we already have a few companies interested in buying the product. They already, they're waiting the team plugin. But we won't go to the Nestle or the P&G. We're gonna go for middle size. And at the same time, because of personal relationship, we got a large telecom company outside Europe who is willing to test it. So we're gonna do another country as a pilot project, so we don't risk to mess it up too much in case something.
How much? You mentioned the way you presented the software, like your solution. It's all automatic. The video call is being recorded, and then there's a report that's spit out that HR, whoever can look at. Is there any need for involvement from your side with the client and interaction to interpret the data?
Okay. So so we don't want to replace like HRs in company. They want to still be useful, and I think are useful.
Do they need any interaction with you once they have access to the data? Do you need to do anything? Is there any interaction there?
As of today, no. But it's very important to invest in support. Let's say what we call maybe sales support. When you have sales support for that, it's not just the IT sales support. It's actually one of the people we want to get on board afterward would be to have some trained psychologists. And they can, when I mentioned before on the page of the sales strategy, let me check if I can move back. I mentioned also about executive coaches, but within the executive coaches, there can be also some psychologists. So some of them can be kind of ambassador. I'm not there anymore. Yes, I'm not sharing the slide anymore. Or
no.
Oh,
no, I'm sorry. Sorry, I thought you were.
No, but you can again. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's not easy. I just wanted to take again.
Maybe not necessary.
It's not necessary, but I just wanted to mention the fact that the executive coaches can be, and psychologists can be used as high-end support sales.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think we are almost done. So like you said, so it's your own money, like no first zero, so you're not diluted. So it's you. Okay. And who else is so it's you two and?
Pardon?
You are the three founders.
Two founders. We are two founders.
Two. Okay. And
the other is a core member of the team. But yeah.
Okay. Great. Perfect. Yeah. I think it's fantastic what you have already achieved. So yeah, congratulations.
And now we have to go to market. So the moment of truth is when you go live.
Of course.
So maybe some advice about David. What do you think? Since I've seen with very great interest all your graphs about when a company like ours need funds and why. What is your?
It's very easy. You need to grow fast and keep your clients. It's very.
Very easy, of course.
No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I also. Who am I after a 5-minute pitch to tell you what to do? You guys are spending hours on your business. I feel we'd have to spend more time talking for me to be able to give you qualified advice. I don't want to make a superficial statement here. But just, I mean, one thing I can say is you sound hesitant about taking on VC. It sounds like you look at it a bit like a necessary evil. That was my impression from the way you frame things.
No.
But the thing is, like, if you find VCs, you're not just taking their money, they're in with you for the long haul. So my only advice would be work with people that you feel comfortable with and with whom you're willing to have a long-term relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only thing I tell you.
Yeah, that's what we talked as well. Because actually you can see nowadays with the crazy valuation of companies, you can see some money coming a bit from everywhere. But you have to be selective because we want someone who knows, like, the business, I would say, better than we know. I mean, in terms you see so many companies, since you're especially around the few, you're on the few specialized VC fund on that. So
we've done health tech, we have digital health companies, we have medtech, biotech, we're quite broad, but we know what it means because we've been in this for 10 years, and like the relationship you build is not one for to give you money in truth, and you're in it for a long time. So that's the only tip I can give you. Find an investor people you want to work with even in hard times in the next few years.
So actually, Verve would be a very good candidate.
Maybe I'm not the one making the decisions.
No, you're on the sales fund side.
But feel free to reach out. I'm happy to make an intro to the investor.
Would be very nice. Thank you.
So just reach out on LinkedIn or via email. You have my contacts. I'm happy to start that conversation.
Excellent. Thank you.
And maybe also like when we selected you to pitch here, like one of the advisors also said, like maybe it's something also for the performance management discussion also, that it's like a lot of companies are struggling in doing it, and sometimes it doesn't even happen, even if it should at least once a year. Some companies are not even doing it, so like maybe also this could be maybe something. Great. So then thank you so much for your insight, and
thank you for the opportunity.
It was a pleasure, and David, also thanks to you for great insight. So I will just say a few words about our new events. So we have several other investment events, but less regarding startups, more traditional investments. Our monthly investment roundtables with Zweiwells. They are like independent investment advisors. Then some career advices especially also for females. This we want to say. Then our diversity and inclusion summit. Also the CEO of Amazon Switzerland will come also, in the blockchain summit and so on. So please have a look, and we look forward to see you soon. And thanks a lot, and I wish you all the best. And it takes a lot of strength and never give up. So this is, I think, the most important thing as an entrepreneur. So believe in it and keep on trying, and best of luck. Bye-bye.
Bye.